Where is this part?
Oh, it's just another part of the apartment.
Ah, okay. I was like, what in the wide world of sports is going on? I did not recognize it.
Right next to the window.
Ah, okay. So Bart is here, considering it is Wednesday.
It is Wednesday.
And I do have a couple of things to discuss with you on a couple of different levels. We do have a little bit of this from the NWSL. So let me go ahead and see if I can hit the right buttons. And
Hit that sounder, John.
Bay FC has named their first head coach. The NWSL Expansion Club hires Albertine Montoya, who was most recently the interim coach for Washington Spirit. So Bay FC wasting no time in bringing in Albertine Montoya to be their new head coach.
Well, they're moving forward. I think that's a good start. You saw how that benefited San Diego getting a coach well before the start of their season and able to kind of lay the groundwork and help guide player selection. Because as much as I'm sure the sporting director has their vision, it helps to have a coach in place. We saw that with Atlanta and how having Tata can actually make your team better.
Oh, you wanted to talk about what's going on in Seattle. I know that we'll talk to Nico about it tomorrow.
Look, okay, yes, I want to talk about the Seattle brand refresh. I don't want to call it a rebrand. I think that's a misnomer.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of Seattle, so I don't have the connection to the logo they have.
Yeah.
But I do work in marketing and branding.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is a fantastic update to I don't think the logo was that good. I think that's just where I kind of stand on this. I think that what they currently have is a little boring. Which, people say the new one they just said is even more boring. But the one they have now, to me, is boring. It's a little misguided, and it doesn't really stand the test of time, even as it's, 15 years old.
Yeah. My first question would be, did they need to do a refresh?
Did they need to? Probably not. But I think in the context of they, definitely positioned this as something they're doing for the 50th anniversary of the club.
Yeah,
I understand that. If I were to rank MLS clubs that needed a refresh or a rebrand, they would have not been in the top 5. They may have been in the top 5 once we get down to it.
Who's your top 5?
Oh, well, Real Salt Lake is number 1. That logo is terrible. On top of the name, which is also terrible. So Real Salt Lake would be 1. I really don't love the FC Dallas logo, but that's just my personal opinion.
Right.
And after that, I think that you're looking at a team like possibly who?
Crew.
They should have just never changed.
Stick with
Seattle has a logo that I think people think is iconic, but that doesn't mean it's good. Yeah. And I think what they did with this refresh was take the important elements, present them in a cleaner, more direct way, and also provide some other brand options for the club to play with. Now, I don't love that the orca or the carnation isn't incorporated into the badge, yet you're just using them anyway. But I like the whole suite that they've created. I like the new word mark of the Seattle Sounders. The one they were using on the badge was very bad. It was bad. So this is a great upgrade to that. And it just gives them more fun to play with. They added a color, the teal. They've added some darker blue. They didn't change any of the colors. They retooled them a little bit, but everything will feel the same when it's presented on the field. And I think that's what's going to matter the most when it comes to, I don't think they're going to be going to a teal blue jersey at home. I still think they'll keep that rave blue and green, or rave green and blue, I should say. But, I think this was a better, one of the best refreshes that we've seen in a while for MLS.
And I give them, meaning Seattle, a lot of credit for their alternate jerseys, the Jimi Hendrix and the Bruce Lee. They've done some fantastic work outside of their word mark, outside of their logo. And, and me being a sucker for nature, I'm glad they brought the whale back in as a part of the discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that the whale adds to the whole brand suite. Maybe we'll see that on a jersey. Who knows? It could be something that you put on the alternate. I think a lot of like how Arsenal does just this cannon, which is absolutely something from the crest. But, you don't need to have Arsenal FC to know what this cannon means. And I don't think you need Seattle Sounders FC to know what the Space Needle in 1974 means.
No.
And I think to me that speaks to the iconicness of the brand personally.
Yeah.
That they didn't need to add all this stuff. They don't need to add Seattle Sounders and one green shield and a blue shield that are overlaid on top of each other and look terrible when you try to go monochrome. They kept it simple because they don't need to add a whole lot of stuff, because Seattle Sounders is a very iconic brand in North American soccer.
Women's soccer on the national side, the national team no longer has Julie Ertz and Megan Rapinoe.
Yeah.
And I don't think we had the chance to kind of discuss Julie Ertz at all. But when it comes to their legacy of Julie Ertz and Megan Rapinoe, I guess we can take this a couple of different ways. Let's start within the context of the women's national team.
Mm-hmm.
Think about them and their legacies that they're leaving behind. What do you think they are?
Well, I think you have kind of two different types of legacies, both equally important. I think the first thing you have to look at is the on-field, what this means. And we saw how finding a Julie Ertz replacement is impossible because she's one of a kind. And for my money, she's the best defensive midfielder that the U.S. has ever seen, period. She might be the best defensive midfielder in women's soccer history, period. She's possibly a top 10 all time in U.S. women's soccer player history. Not just as a defensive midfielder, but also as a center back. She won 2 World Cups playing 2 different positions. Both times she was not the reason the team won, but the reason the team was able to be so effective and potent, because for the most part, she was doing her job incredibly well, better than anyone else could do. So replacing her is going to be the hardest task that the next coach has, because we saw Vlatko try to do it with Andy Sullivan, who, that just never worked. But then you look at the off the field legacy and the bigger impact legacy. And Megan Rapinoe has done that more than anyone since the 99ers, and possibly more than the 99ers, mainly because she was able to put the pressure on the federation to come to the table to find a way to get equal pay. She got she had to go through 2 U.S. Soccer Federation presidents, got 1 fired, basically, and finally was able to leverage the success that the team has had to get the equal pay agreement that they deserve. Obviously that wasn't just Megan Rapinoe's doing, but the way that she took the burden and the spotlight on her in 2019, no other player in U.S. soccer history could have done that in the same way. For such a small girl, she has such broad shoulders. And I think that alone, we are seeing how that has spurred conversations globally for all women's programs to kind of look at the U.S. and say, well, they did it, why can't we? And we saw a lot of that in 2023, this past World Cup, and we're still seeing, unfortunate that we're not seeing, true payoff, because some federations, Spain, don't want to pony up and treat women the way they should, give women the resources they should be receiving, or treat them even with any sort of respect. But I think Pino's impact off the field is greater than her on-field impact, and that's saying a lot, because she won 2019 Golden Ball, Golden Boot, Ballon d'Or, FIFA Best. You think of the iconic moment she's given us in a U.S. shirt. To say that her off-field impact is greater is quite something.
Then you had the 2 matches against South Africa that were the official national goodbyes for both of them. And it was a chance for the U.S. to have some international debuts. Mia Fischel, M.A. Vignola got their debuts, chance to celebrate at the same time. I know that I don't want to get wrapped up in final scores and sit there and go, oh, it was only 2-0. Oh, it was only 3-0. You only beat them by 5-0, in both matches.
Yeah.
But what can you take away from these other than sit there and say, we got to celebrate, nobody got hurt, folks got debuts? Did I miss anything?
No, that's it, John, because you have a interim head coach that, as much as I think Twyla Kilgore is probably a nice woman, she's not getting the full-time job. That just isn't what the path is. She is the interim that is just there to kind of keep things going. There's not even like a real goal, at least with like Anthony Hudson and BJ Callahan. Like there were things you were trying to accomplish, like you were trying to win CONCACAF Nations League, you were trying to win a Gold Cup. Here, the goal is just go out there and play soccer so we can celebrate Julie Ertz and Megan Rapinoe. And in October, it'll be a little bit different because I think Colombia is a level up from South Africa. But, I mean, the goals are still the same. We're just trying to go out there and play soccer, and that's it. So there's not much you can take from these friendlies, unfortunately. And I don't think – I mean, you can take – I think the one thing I would take is I'm very frustrated Vlatko never fully transitioned to the double pivot when it was clear that oh my goodness, Roosevelt wasn't going to be healthy for the World Cup. He's tried to stick with that single defensive midfielder, 2 attacking midfielder formation, and he should have not done that. And that's the only takeaway I have from this, but that's still hindsight. And I don't know how much of a difference that would have really made in our World Cup performance. So look, we played 2 matches. Great.
After the matches themselves, players were asked what they would like to see in a new manager. And this comes from Jeff Carlisle over at the 4-letter. Lindsey Horan's response, and then into your list of individuals and my list of individual. Let's see if we can compare and contrast the Horan answer with who's on the list. Quote, I think we want a coach that comes in and helps us in our style of play and sets a clear message of what we're going to do moving forward and how we're going to play moving forward. But someone who also can get the best out of this team and can help in individual development and just help this country grow in a way that we probably haven't seen in women's football in this country, because a lot of teams are getting better and playing better and causing problems for us. Who is that individual? Or who's on that list for you?
Well, I mean, I think that's the question is, what does style of play mean for the U.S.? Because this is something that we've talked about holistically is, I know Jason could pontificate on this for years, I feel like, but I think identifying a single style of play for the United States, men's or women's, is a fool's errand because of the lack of single clarity on how soccer should be played in this country. Because you have, not only do we have 327, million people in this country, a third of those who are involved in soccer in some way, shape, or form, probably. That's probably overestimating, but whatever.
Hey, 109 million to choose from. That's a great talent pool.
You look at even just across MLS, where the Philadelphia Academy is teaching kids very differently than the Dallas Academy is teaching kids very differently than the Atlanta Academy is teaching kids very differently than the Red Bulls Academy. You don't have that variance in other countries. I mean, you think of the way Spain played and won this past World Cup. Well, that's because they've been playing that way since they were 2. That is the Spanish style. Now, it was a little bit more, I'll say it was a little bit more direct, but that was because you had Parejuelo, who's fantastic and literally a track star. But, I think the question of style of play is different from what Horan was talking about is philosophy, direction, mentality, right? The style of play, look, we're probably going to be a possession-based team because in most of our games, if not all of our games, we're going to be the team that is going to be more talented, more talented on the ball, better passing, better at just about everything. But what does that mean from a style? Well, does that need to be a singular style, or does that just need to be a mentality and general direction and philosophy? That's my question. That's my legitimate question, because I don't know how that looks on the U.S. level. I think Greg Berhalter has instilled a style of play for the U.S. men that I think could work for the women. Don't kill me on that comment section. Mainly because the women have much more talented players, and that style of play works well with very talented players. But I don't know if there's a coach that necessarily, especially in the women's game, is so devoted to a singular style of play that would come coach the U.S.
Matt Crocker had a roundtable with reporters before the South Africa match, and he says, quote, he said he talked to about half the players, wants to talk to all of them. Quote, I think there was definitely a sense that we need to be better with the ball and have more solutions, in particular in the building, what we call building the attack. It's that sort of second phase where once the ball goes to fullback or center back, how do we get it? How do we find solutions in midfield to retain possession and build and create? And then, obviously, there was a lot of reference to when we face a low block, we've got the ball, and there's a back five and a deep four midfield, having solutions, creative solutions in those tight spaces, and having the players and also the tactics to beat the low block, really, and us needing to be better in that space, end quote.
Absolutely, and that was obviously something that Vlatko struggled with, which was, again, weird because his Kansas City teams and not OL Reign at that point, they were just Seattle Reign teams were actually pretty decent at ball possession, ball control. I would still argue that we were very good at ball possession and control. We just weren't good at building attacking phases of play. And so, that's the style of play you're looking at, is an attacking style, right? If you want to tell me what your style of play is, it's an attacking, high tempo style. That's what I want to see from the U.S. women, because we have great athletes. We have incredibly talented soccer players. We need to press our advantages where we can. And we never did that throughout this past cycle. We weren't really capitalizing on the talent and the athletic ability that we had. But I'm glad he's talking to the players, John. I think in this sense, it makes a lot more sense, because, again, you're talking about players players that have won multiple World Cups still. You're still talking about Alex Morgan and Alyssa Nair, and, even if you're talking to someone like Lindsey Horan, Rose Lavelle, they've won World Cups. So I do want them to be involved in kind of stating how they feel a coach should treat them, treat the team, and what they need from the coach. Because it was very clear that the identification process for the best coach last time around wasn't as robust as it needed to be. And I think we've seen that from Crocker, that he is going to put together a formula. Whether you agree with that formula is one thing, but he's going to try to put together a robust formula to find the best candidate.
Crocker said, if we're going to be brave to play in tight pockets of space in those midfield areas to start with, we're going to make mistakes. And if the first time we make those mistakes, we just revert back to type, we're never going to get past that stage. So we've got to be brave enough to know that on occasions things might go wrong. Lindsey Horan said that she's satisfied with the way Crocker is going about the search, didn't want to get into specifics of her conversations, but told Carlisle that Crocker, is asking the right questions of the players and staff, as well as how to progress the program. Quote, maybe we've fallen off a bit in terms of everything, and we've got to get better. I think he, meaning Crocker, is doing a really good job of just finding what works and what doesn't. We've got to move forward.
Yeah, and I think the problem right now is you're in this little neutral spot, right? Because these next two windows are going to be an interim head coach in Twyla Kilgore, who is basically a holdover from Vlatko. I didn't see anything at all that was different than what we saw at the World Cup. We still struggled to create in wide spaces because it was all ISO ball, that we have to get away from. We do have to play as a team, and you got to find a coach who's going to set up the team to play as a team. I know you're down for Randy Waldrum, so.
I am down for Randy Waldrum. I know that violates every aspect of backyard brawl for you. But
honestly, I think rescuing a man from having to be a Pitt is a noble cause. I say that I have enjoyed. That city is actually a great city to go visit if you ever have the time. If you're ever there, it's a great city. The the university we won't need to talk. There's multiple other universities in Pittsburgh that are great, and then there's Pitt.
Why is Neil Brown still employed?
Well, he's won 3 in a row here, John.
I know.
He hasn't beaten a good team yet, but he's won 3 in a row. He's 3-1.
Okay, just checking.
We still haven't scored more than 24 points in a game yet. So 20 points in a game.
Who do you have this weekend?
TCU. So we might score more than 20 points.
Probably will give up.
We'll probably give up about 40.
Canada looks like they're going to. Canada is going to defend their gold medal. They beat Jamaica in the aggregate 4-1. Got the second leg of that yesterday. They're going to be making their way through, but I mean, I don't know how much of this is still an ish storm, and I think a lot of it is when it comes to Canada. And I think that you've got to give the players a lot of credit for persevering and focusing on the task at hand with all the madness going on around them, that they still are doing what they're supposed to be doing against a tougher Jamaica team than in years past.
Yeah, I mean, I think they went on the road and won 2-0. That's a pretty impressive scoreline. You know, I was genuinely not expecting that. I thought it would be a 1-1, 0-0 draw down in Jamaica, to be quite clear, because Jamaica has played very well recently. They seem to have a very bought-in team. But Canada getting a 4-1 victory over the 2-legged aggregate is pretty good. I'm proud of Canada for being able to host a match in Canada. I didn't realize they were able to do that. They could do that, probably because CONCACAF did it, so CONCACAF had to kick in the money. But I'm with you, John. Like the players being able to just get out there and put their heads down and do their jobs very well is impressive, laudable. Ashley Lawrence was featured a lot, so shout out to the WVU girl there.
Joshua Clokey says that Mauro Biello looks like he could be in position for the full-time role. Right now, he is the interim. So Biello, Herdman's longtime number 1, former boss at CF Montreal, given the interim tag on August 28th. Once the full-time gig, Canada Soccer also announced that the next men's team coach will be hired by the next general secretary, a role that is yet to be filled full-time since the departure of Earl Cochran back in May. They expect to name their general secretary by the end of the year, potentially extending Biello's time in charge until then. They thought that Biello would only be in charge until the middle of October for the match against Japan, but that announcement looks like it's going to keep Biello as substitute teacher for a while. And right through the 2024 Copa America qualifiers in November. So Biello looks like he's got the inside kind of by default.
That's kind of the tricky thing for Canada right now, that you're playing Copa America qualifiers, not just Nations League, right? Because it's Nations League, but let's be real honest. The real prize is Copa America.
Right.
That's tricky for Canada because they do need to they need to be in there because they need the money, first off. But they need to be able to back up all the ish talk they've had for the past 3 years. And you can't talk ish if you're not at Copa America, because that means you're definitely not one of the top 4 teams in CONCACAF.
True.
Or top 6, I should say. And I think if you're Canada, you really want to qualify directly. Same as the U.S. You don't want to have to go to this playoff thing that they're doing, if you don't win the quarterfinal match. If he does well, then I don't see why Canada wouldn't keep him. I'm sure he's not going to cost as much as it wouldn't cost as much as a full-on search, which I'm sure they would be happy with, but also a guy who seems to know Canadian soccer, which probably is what they need as well. I mean, I think that was one of the benefits Herdman had, was he understood where Canada soccer was, where it needed to go. And I mean, again, he was very successful with the women's team, got more success out of the men's team, relatively speaking. And built a program that I think now should be able to launch itself to becoming an actually good team on the world stage. I mean, I don't think they're going to be competing for the top 20 anytime soon, but you need to, and look, if you want to progress like you want to, you need to be in the top 4 of CONCACAF. You need to be in the final 4 of the Nations League. You need to be at Copa America, and doing that with the substitute teacher is going to be difficult, but the team's talented enough. I mean, that's the thing.
One more women's soccer story before we get into the 2 moments of reffing down here. And if I have to hold up the board to sit there and signify that we're adding time to the clock.
Yeah, we're adding time.
That's perfectly cool.
I'll give you what I give to my ARs when I
There you go.
Hold up a hand.
Hold up a hand. All right. Story that I came across, and it was really interesting, and I don't know if it's interesting in a good way or a bad way. I'm leaning toward the latter. Kieran Pender at The Guardian, Football Australia. Headline: Football Australia considered selling off the Matildas and Socceroos to a private equity firm for 99 years. An exclusive says the document shows rights to national teams, A-leagues, and all data of football participants, including children, was part of the possible deal.
Yeah.
Exploring selling off the rights to basically everything to turn it all private. Deal could have involved commercializing the data of all Australian football participants, including children as young as 4, in a proposal that raised significant privacy concerns. A slide deck prepared for a working group of the FA board in late 2020, seen by Guardian Australia, reveals plans for the establishment of a new legal entity, a special purpose vehicle to control the sport's major assets. FA and Australian professional leagues would have held a majority stake in the new legal entity, with the minority holding sold to a new investor, would have each held a 50% share of the majority stake. This was like, I saw this and I'm like, really? Okay.
I have a lot of questions, Sean, because I think my first one is, you said it was late 2020.
Yeah.
So when I was reading the story, I thought this sounds like something that like Football Federation Australia was like desperate during the COVID pandemic to find a way to take this financial burden off them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember exactly, but I know they have sponsorship deals with the Matildas team. I think they have one with the Socceroos team. So I think this may have just been Football Australia trying to find ways to lessen their financial burden of fielding these teams. But I'm glad they didn't, because that data privacy thing would have been really yucky when you talk about kids, especially.
Yeah, and so I have posted it in the Twitch pitch for required reading for the day as something that, if you're looking for funds in 2020, sometimes you'll do things that may not necessarily be the smartest play on the board, but if you're that desperate for funds, then you'll do these.
And that's, that would have been a lifetime thing. You say 99 years, that would have just been, that's forever. The only positive would have been we would have had confirmation if Sam Kerr and Christy Mewis are engaged or not. That seems to be the rumor flying around. They both got rings on their finger. We don't know what's going on. So,
hey, mazel tov to the kids. If that is
2
reffing down here moments this week. I know that one was involved having to do with an open roof, and there was initial confusion on an open roof on a weekend, which folks really enjoyed because the weather benefited.
Yep.
It was a benefit to have an open air. And then there was another one involving Johnny Russell, and then Johnny Russell ended up getting more, how should we say this? Got another envelope from the disco committee. The Giacomakis goal and the machinations around it as to why this was allowed, because there was some trepidation and VAR and review and all these kinds of things, and you had to look at it, but walk us through why this was allowed to stand.
Well, first off, I had a great view of this because this happened literally right in front of my seat. So I'm cheering knowing that they're probably going to look at this for an offside, because Gigi was in the offside position when the ball was played to him, right? When that ball was kicked by either the defender or John De Silva, which is the question that they had to figure out. He was in an offside position because obviously we're pressing high. So obviously, in the VAR era, we want to keep our flags down for as long as possible. Now, I got in trouble with this over the weekend because I put my flag up a little too early. We don't have VAR at the U19 DPL level. We don't have that. So my flag went up because the player was offside. What they did was, I also think that the referee in the center, I think wasn't 97% sure, or wasn't 100% sure that Gigi was in an offside position. That's not something you fully know from that angle. And the AR may not have been fully convinced that the last player to touch it was an Atlanta United player when it went to Gigi. So both the AR and the center referee had to kind of have that conversation in the moment to go, okay, what is our actual call here? Because both men had pieces of information that they needed to come together, talk about, and say, okay, I saw the center ref said, I think, or the AR said, hey, GG was in an offside position, but I didn't, who touched it last? And the center referee said, I think Jean de Silva touched it last, because when you look at the play, Jean de Silva does reach for the ball to poke it away. He's not the one who ends up touching it last, basically, is what it comes down to. So they called it was incorrect, but it was the correct process to call the goal offside in the beginning. I do think it took a little too much time to send it to review. I think if I were like the center ref, I would be like, hey, can you check that? Because we need to know. You go to VAR. The VAR says, yeah, you need to take a look at this. And the center referee says, yeah, okay, that was a deliberate play on the ball by the defender, meaning that he wasn't kicked or fouled even during it. That was probably another thing they were looking at. It was a deliberate play on the ball by the defender, and GG was the benefactor, even though he was in the offside position.
Second moment, Johnny Russell got an extra envelope from our friends at the disciplinary committee for failing to leave the field in a timely manner in the 37th minute of the match against Houston on the weekend. Wanted to have a little bit of an extra discussion, figure out why he was given a red. And
fair question.
Then he continued to discuss, and then he goes to security, and he's wanting to have a talk with the fourth on his way out the door. 37th minute, he got a red. He wanted to talk, and so he got a little bit of an extra envelope. What is your takeaway there with that one?
I think he's right to be upset because there was no foul called on the incident that he got a red card. Look, I saw a Scottish guy saying oh, that's not a foul. That's a casual, hello in Scotland, which is probably very true. But I don't particularly think it was a red card either, personally. Yeah. And I think again, you didn't call a foul on the field. You weren't even giving it a yellow card on the field. And you had the AR right there, and he didn't put a flag up. I'm wondering, I didn't see if the fourth official provided any insight because I was also kind of close to the fourth official. I didn't see anything that he provided. The referee didn't signal for anything in the moment. I don't think it was a red card, especially when you compare it to an incident that happened in the Miami-Orlando game that probably should have absolutely been a red card, that the player got away with the yellow card because he wears a pink jersey. So
I figured that one would kind of fire you up a little bit.
Well, that was a red card. That's what the David Ruiz. That's a red card. He goes in 2 feet, scissor kicks the guy with a foot at the knee level. For me, foot anywhere above your ankle, you're cruising for a red card. If you go at the knee, why is your foot that high? This coming from a former goalkeeper who routinely put his foot up high. But why are you doing that on a tackle like that in the middle of the field when also your other leg is coming from behind to kick the guy in the ankles? That is a red card. That is serious foul play. And he doesn't get a red card because I don't know. We got to give Miami a little bit of help because they don't have Messi, and we need to have them in the playoffs, even though they're not going to make it because they have they don't have enough points remaining at this point in time, in my opinion.
The man in his helicopter. You went to the Sikorsky plant.
I mean, look, I'm going full on. Look, if Miami can have 17 DPs, okay, or whatever they're at now, they're talking about who are they talking about signing the other day? Modric. No, they were talking about Modric signing Modric. There's a rumor that they're signing Modric, and I'm like, they don't. What DP slot do they have available to sign Luka Modric?
Well, if they buy Gregory down, then they will have one.
Okay, so they'll have 5 DPs. If they can break all the roster rules, then we can have conversations about how the league is clearly helping them in some referee decisions. And it's not even a referee decision it's concerted. It's just they're getting the benefit of the doubt on everything. I don't have a problem. Look, we'll talk about the conspiracies because Miami's getting every chance they can to make the playoffs. Despite Messi, Alba, and Busquets having to be put together by bubble gum and duct tape. I mean, they need the help. So they're not going to make it, just like Atlanta's not going to make a home playoff spot. But, we're running up against time, and they just don't have the time.
Oh, so what's going on at Soccer for USP?
We recorded yesterday, so we'll have something probably by tomorrow once I get done editing it. Talking about these women's friendlies, but also I've talked with Caleb, who's also from the Atlanta area. He and I talked a lot about U.S. soccer moving to Atlanta and what it means, not just for U.S. soccer from just the holistic training perspective, but also how this is, kind of a signal of Atlanta being a major player in not just U.S. soccer, but U.S. sports. And I as I made the comment on the podcast, people forget we hosted the Olympics, y'all. We're a big time city. You know who hasn't hosted the Olympics? Chicago.
That's true.
Ain't no Dallas in the Olympics.
No.
Get out of here.
No.
New York City ain't ever hosted the Olympics.
No, that's true.
Us, LA, and St. Louis.
And Salt Lake.
For the summer.
Oh,
well, Salt Lake. Yeah, Salt Lake and Lake Placid for a winter. Lake
Yeah.
Placid. I don't even know where Lake Placid is. I know it's in New York.
It's in the mountains.
Is it a Finger Lake or is it a?
It's in that area. I mean, it's up in that part. I've been there. I went to the bobsled training facility once and got to see them do that.
I just know it's in New York.
Yes, it is.
And there was an alligator or something in there. Wasn't that the movie about?
Yes, and don't mess with Betty White.
Yeah.
At Soccer for USPOD at Bartimus Prime 19. Actually, yeah, you were right when you held up your board.
Yeah, that was about right.
So let's see. I thought there was one other thing that I had in my brain that I was going to discuss.
Hey, I got time, John. So.
Oh, where do you think the training facility is going to be? Where do you think HQ is going to be?
I don't know, because I think there's a couple of options. And I have zero insight into this, so please just understand that. I think the option that I think makes the most sense, because it's currently being used as a sports soccer complex, is Georgia Sports Park down off of Ben Hill Road on the southwest side of Atlanta. It's still ITP. It's very close to the airport, which I do think they want to try to stay close to the airport, because that kind of seems to be like, one, it's going to cut costs on shuttling and whatever. I'm sure they'll have their own shuttles, but you don't want Christian Pulisic and Weston McKennie getting off of a flight from Torino and Milan and then having to sit in an hour on a bus. Now, I do. This is the idea I have, John. Sorry, This is way off track. I need Weston McKennie and Christian Pulisic on MARTA. Give me that and the behind the crest video whenever they cut. Like, give me them. Take a video crew with them and put them on MARTA for like a trip. I want to see this. But I think Georgia Sports Park down there on the southwest side of the city would be good. They've already got about 7 fields. They have a building there, but like it's small. They could get rid of that. But you've already got the land. There's land around it that you could expand. The other possible location could be the DeKalb location that they presume to build the Atlanta United Training Center before it went to Marietta. And I think the other option, honestly, John, is somewhere next to the Atlanta United Training Facility. I think that could also be a potential spot. The thing that you have to remember is they're not just building a headquarters building. They're building a playing facility. They're probably building a showcase stadium or 2.
Yeah.
It could be. I mean, the second one might be what they have at the Atlanta United Training Grounds, but they're probably going to build a 5,000 to 10,000 seat showcase stadium, is my bet, on top of another stadium field, because they have the stated goal of hosting youth tournaments and stuff. And so they're not talking about, Georgia soccer youth tournaments. They're talking about inviting the French national team and Senegalese U19s and all these teams to come over and play. They're going to need 10 plus fields. They're probably going to need some indoor training facilities, They're going to need some smaller size fields as well as some dedicated indoor space for playing because of the extended national team programs that they're housing there. And then you're going to probably need, outside of just the indoor training, indoor performance centers. This is going to house referee and coaching development. So you're probably going to have some classroom stuff there that may be an HQ, but you're talking about all these things being built. And what I think people don't realize, and this is where Atlanta does make the most sense for a couple of reasons. One, we've got the airport. That is the number one seller. But 2, you still can buy and build inside Atlanta, which, for us is ITP,
right,
for a relatively inexpensive cost. And you're going to need a lot, because right now, U.S. Soccer has the headquarters in Chicago, no longer Soccer House, but some office building location.
Office house,
yeah. They use Kansas City for a lot of their coaching and referee, their big coaching and referee development classes. And then they have most of their youth training is done out in LA at the Olympic / Home Depot Center. Not Home Depot Center. Dignity Health Sports Park. Sorry.
There you
go. My bad. And those are all large facilities in themselves. Like, you think about the Kansas City training facility. You think about the U.S. National Olympic Training Facility / Dignity Health. Those are large facilities as they are. Mm-hmm. And you're consolidating all of those 3 locations into one. You're going to need a lot of space. And I think Atlanta has the space to provide that still in the city. I don't think they'll want to go too far outside the city. I really don't think that makes sense, John.
No.
We're not looking at they're going to be next to the NHL team out in Cumming, but I think they might. I could see them in the Roswell Marietta extension, if that makes sense. Kind of that far out.
Yep, I'm right there with you.
But Georgia Sports Soccer Park is one that I think that location makes the most sense. And you can still run a club out of there. That's, to me, the other thing is you can still run because Georgia Soccer Park right now is just used for high-level youth games by Concord Fire. They could still do that. Yeah. Because it's not going to be, those training fields aren't going to be used 24/7.
Nope, right there with you. I think it's
where do you want it?
I think the South Side is where I'm looking. Georgia Soccer, their part that was what was sticking in my head was something south, close to the airport. Get them in, get them out, get them trained, have space. It's there, you can do it. My secondary site was something that you have been championing for quite some time. Is all of that space in the West End over at Herndon.
Yeah.
And then just turn that upside down and have it as a part of AUC. And you've got the link to Mercedes-Benz right there. So you can have that travel right there, really, really easy between the 2 facilities if you needed it to have the large venue for the big game. And then you have the training facilities there. But I don't
know how much Mercedes-Benz is going to play into this, John.
No, but I mean,
we still have the turf on the field. So
you'll swap it out. We've seen it in the summer series. But I think Georgia Soccer Park.
We haven't shown. Yeah.
I think Georgia Soccer is my number one place down there on the South Side.
To me, it makes the most sense because it's already fit for that use, and there's space to add other fields and training facilities and everything, and it's in a fine location. People don't have to live right next door because there's really not a lot of livable space there, to be honest. But it's close enough to other things that you can live in, Peachtree City still. You could live in Henry County, Clayton County. You could live in the city and get there very easily.
Yep, no doubt. All right, let me wrap up the show because I've got stuff, gossip, rumor, and innuendo and stuff to watch. So Soccer for US POD due out allegedly tomorrow.
Yeah.
When he's done, we'll post it. We'll post it in short order. He's Bartimus Prime 19, and he got to hang out for 12 added minutes.
I know. Hey, y'all, enjoy the Gummy Bear Cup today.
Oh, yeah, exactly. We want upsets. Be good, my friend.